From the dawn to the setting sun, let your song be on our tongue.
Well, hello and welcome to Idolkiller, a ministry dedicated to destroying sacred cows for the cause of Christ. I am your host, Warren McGrew, and you're joining me for a chill stream this evening, but I am not alone. No, I have brought Christopher Fisher.
A dangerous friend.
What's that?
A dangerous friend.
A dangerous friend, that's right. Yes, yep, you've given the Calvinist many a reason to slander me and attack me. And you've made a few comments in my live stream that I almost read out loud that could have gotten me demonetized.
Oh no!
But
you'd lose at least $3 if you demonetized one of your streams.
Well, every dollar matters right now. I'm broke as a joke, and
yeah. I got an idea.
Yeah.
It's a get quick rich scheme. All we need is a playground, a camera, a small black child, and then give, send, go.
I'll record you.
We'll be millionaires.
Yes, I'll record you. Yeah, nope, not my thing, man. Not my thing. I can't go there. Can't go there. But hey, that's a great transition, by the way.
It's a great transition. I set you up transition. There.
So I don't know if you guys are aware or not, but there is a debate that's coming up. Let's see if I can find this thing somewhere on here. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So we've got a debate coming up with Dr. who? Dr. James White, and he's going to be debating Lutheran, excommunicated Lutheran, I'm not sure, Corey Mahler, and on black sanctification. It's going to be very interesting. He's going to be, I believe James White defends the proposition that God can sanctify.
God does choose eternally, election in the ether, this eternal call into the void, some black individuals.
It's fascinating because one of the things that's really interesting too. Let me bring us back up here. One of the things that's really interesting too is if you look at like the history of Reformed theology and Calvinists, they are largely, ethnically speaking, Anglo-Saxon. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but like because it came out of like the European movement, they're predominantly Anglo-Saxon. So, maybe if Corey Mahler took the proposition that they could be sanctified to the same degree, but just in smaller numbers, he would maybe have a different, maybe a more defensible position historically speaking. Because I think just you don't have the same numbers in Reformed theology being converted, but
And in Calvinism, when God saves the world, it means all different peoples. Not God. God loves all different types of people,
yeah,
not every single individual. So, but he probably leans towards one category more specifically in the Calvinist, or
yeah.
in their estimation.
So I'm considering doing a live stream watch party or maybe a debate review, depending on how it goes.
That's going to be terrible. Okay, so I watched this bearded guy. I don't know his name.
Corey Mahler.
Okay, so then I also found out that he does this podcast like Stone Temple something. I don't know. But I had listened to that podcast before as well, and that also was terrible. I couldn't listen to it. But his debate was just incredibly tedious because he's up there and he just makes assertions. And so there's a Calvinist thing, and he's doing the Calvinist thing, but for race politics, where it's like, okay, black people are the descendants of Ham, and there's a curse for Canaan. It's like, and then he's just making, it's like, there's nothing to back up these statements. They're just claims that are just thrown into the void without substantiating evidence. I mean, I'm sure it works in his own mind. It's like, well, the Bible has this says this, and this, so it fits what I'm saying here. So the two are compatible. But the problem is just the Bible doesn't say the things that he's saying.
No. It doesn't say the things that either one of them say, generally speaking. What's interesting is as I was like looking into this guy, I found this article that he wrote. It doesn't say, "Am I a racist?" which is the way I read it at first. I thought he was answering a question like, "Am I?" And then I thought, well, he'll go in and explain why he's not. But it actually says, "I am." And then so he's like, "It is in this spirit that I affirm the following: I am." And he goes on to say he's a racist. So I thought, well, that's sweet. That's kind. It's interesting to see modern Lutherans following Luther, and into their baptism. I just, a lot of people that have never studied this, Luther wrote a book called On the Jews and Their Lies that inspired a certain little mustached German man to go on his night.
Is there evidence that he ever read that book by Luther? I don't think so.
Oh, come on. Don't ruin
It inspired it
with facts. Don't.
Okay,
but yeah, no, Luther definitely did not favor the Jews. But to be fair, he also didn't like the poor either. He didn't like the peasants. And
so I found out something about my favorite ruler of all time, Dracula, Vlad the Impaler. He threw this big banquet for all the poor, the crippled, the homeless, just this huge feast. And so they all come to this big banquet hall. And once they're all inside, he closes the doors and just burns it down because he was tired of beggars all over his kingdom.
Are you serious?
Well, yeah. Well, I get my history from obscure, weird sources, and so I didn't get that from a primary or secondary source. So I got it from a tertiary source. So take it for what it's worth.
The guy behind the 7-Eleven.
It was a YouTube video on Vlad the Impaler, and I went to Dracula's castle. I broke into Dracula's castle. In fact, I snuck up there because it was closed, and I didn't go all the way to Transylvania not to see Dracula's castle. So I stealthed up there and had to evade Romanian guards to escape. But that's a different story.
Oh my goodness, that should be what we talk about tonight, Chris.
Oh, you want to talk about that?
That would be. I think everybody put a 1 in the channel if you want to hear how Chris broke in and escaped Dracula's castle. That's impressive.
Right. So in the chat, real quick, somebody said God cursed Canaan and not Ham. That was a subject in that debate. They're going back and forth, and the white supremacist guy was saying that like one thing meant the other, and I don't know. He had some convoluted reason why it's the same. But of course, Canaan was the child of Ham, and my take is that when you unrobe someone or see their nakedness within the Bible, often that's a euphemism for having sex with their partner. So it looks like Ham had sexual relations with his mother and birthed Canaan, and this is why Canaan seems to be cursed in that particular story.
Yeah, definitely some. The Bible's not shy of some controversial documentation of relations. But yeah, people are putting ones in the chat here, Chris.
So it's 2006. I just graduate college, and so me and my friend, we decide to backpack around Europe. This is like the age before cell phones. So we are backpacking Europe with travel guides and like looking for hostels and stuff like that. And it was funny. Like in Liechtenstein, it was the winter, it's the dead of winter, and we go to Liechtenstein, and all the hostels are closed for the winter. So we had to like sleep outside, like just freezing, and I started hallucinating. It was so cold. So this is that trip. So it was Christmas, and I picked Vienna because Christmas in Vienna sounded like romantic, nice time. It was blah. It wasn't anything. And my friend's like, okay, you picked where we went for Christmas. I get to pick where we go for New Year's. I'm like, okay, wherever you want. He says, we're going to Transylvania. I'm like, what are we talking about? Is that even on our Eurail pass? He's like, yeah, we're going there. I'm like, all right, you pick. So we go to Bucharest in Romania. And this is the biggest armpit of a city you've ever seen. It's like a modern European city, except for they have wild packs of dogs that run all over, and they poop in the streets, and it's just like, what is this weird third world country? So we go to this hostel, and who do we meet there? It's a Navy diver. So he stayed there. He's all alone, and we're talking to him about our plans to go to Bran, where Bran's castle is. Now, Bran's castle inspired the Dracula novel, but it's there's no evidence like he ever lived there, Vlad the Impaler. But that's what inspired the actual novel Dracula. So it's Bran's castle. And so he decides he wants to come along with us on this little trip. And so we board this, like the next day, we board this like old Soviet broken down bus. It was just like dirt everywhere. It's like, what are we doing? We're getting out off of the grid. We drive. It's the middle of winter. It is just absolutely freezing. We get to Bran, and we start looking around, but guess what? The whole town is packed. All the hotels are just filled to capacity. And so we've been doing this thing where we've been sleeping. We traveled Europe. It cost us $3,000 the whole trip. We were sleeping outdoors. We're sleeping on trains. We're sleeping in open air and bus stops. So it's like, where are we sleeping here? It is so cold here. It's inland. It's like we're going to freeze to death. So I found this burnt out church. I'm like, if anything, we're sleeping here. But we kept looking, and we found a hotel that was under construction. We started talking to the guy. He's like, oh, we don't got any rooms, the hotel's not done. But we kind of pressed it. That's what you do if you're backpacking, because maybe sometimes people let you stay there at their places, things like that. And so he's like, okay, you can stay here. And so we had the whole night. It was me, my friend, the Navy diver, and we're like, okay, let's go see Dracula's castle. So we walk all the way over there, and there's a little sign on the door. It says closed for New Year's. It's like, we're only going to be there like 1-2 days. We're traveling Europe at this break pace speed, hitting 30 countries at about 45 days, something like that. Country every other day. It's like we can't wait for this to open, because it's turned into like a tourist destination. And so I look at it, and so how it's situated is you got Bran's castle. It's on top of this hill, and there's this like football-sized plain in the front, and it's got this big wall, like a stone wall that goes around the front, and there's this little guard shack, and the guard shack's manned and stuff like that. And so I'm like, I didn't come all this way to not see Dracula's castle. Like, boys, I'm breaking in there. And so the Navy diver and my friend, my Navy diver and the friend, they're like, "Oh no, Matt, that's a terrible idea." It's like you guys go do whatever you want. You guys do what you want. You do your own thing. That's fine. I'm gonna break it. And so peer pressure went out, and they're both like, "Okay, we're all breaking in with you." And so I'm like, "Okay, we need to watch this wall. We'll look at this wall. We'll follow this wall. It leads over into that rock face there, and we could scale the rock face and jump over the wall." And that was our plan of attack. So we follow the wall all the way to the rock face, and we kept following the rock face, looking for an easy in. We finally saw the place where we could scale the rocks to get over the fence. So we scale up there. It's the middle of winter. There's snow everywhere, and so we're scaling this mountain, trying to get up to the Dracula's castle. And there's like a road that goes around the base of the hill or whatever. So every time a car would come, we'd all freeze and we'd hide in the snow. And it's like, oh no, they're going to catch us, like crawling up at like the dead of night. It was like 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. And so we get to the top of the castle and we take our pictures and stuff. And the Navy diver guy, he's like, oh man, screw all this special ops stuff. I'm just going to go out the front gate. I'm like, no, dude, this is the worst idea ever. What are you thinking? If we just go back the way we came, no one will ever know we're here. We'll get out with our pictures. Everything's going to be fine. There's going to be, he's like, nope, I'm going. And my friend, he's like, okay, I'm going too. I'm like, good. What is going? I guess I'm going too. And so the way the front of the castle works is there's a winding path that goes all the way up to the castle, but we start straight down, beelining towards that gate. So we have to go all the way down the hill. Then we have to go to that flat surface plate. And then we have to go to the guard shack and say, hey, can I get let out of this castle? And so we're halfway down the hill, and all of a sudden there's this Romanian guard. He's trotting up the path or whatever. And so it's dead of night. We all hide in the snow, and we're just sitting there, when you're in these situations, they're really tense. And so your heart's like beating like 50 miles a minute. And what's like really like a minute seems like half an hour, where you're just frozen. You're waiting to see if you're caught and stuff. And so finally he's out of sight. I drop onto the path. I drop off into the field into this dark spot, and my friends join me. I said, guys, we need to just sit here. We need to figure out where the guards are. We need to figure out where their routes are, what they're doing. Then we need to figure out a plan of action. We just need to sit and surveil the situation. And so we wait there for maybe like 2 minutes, like literally 2 minutes. And the Navy diver guy, he gets impatient. He's like, I'm not doing this. I'm out of here. He just takes off running. And he just disappears into the dark. I don't know where he went. He's just gone. And like, okay. And then all of a sudden there's this dog running around. It's like, a dog? That's the worst thing that could happen. These dogs, they can see at night. They smell. And so you see it just darting around everywhere and barking and stuff like that. That runs off. I'm like, okay, we got to get out of here before this dog catches us. So me and my friend, we take off running, and we get to this little stream thing, and there's like this little hill. And the Navy diver guy is standing there. He's got his knife. He's like, this dog tried to attack me. I had my knife out. I was throwing snow at it, trying to get it to go away, and then finally ran away. I said, okay, here's our plan. There's a well over there, and if we scale this well, it has one of the little steeple things. We get on top of that, we could jump over the fence, and then we could get out to freedom. And so he's like, okay, I'm with you. I take off running. We get to the fence. We scale the fence and jump off. We all get out, fine and dandy. We get back to the hotel, but guess what? So it's New Year's 2006. So not only is Romania, it's New Year's party, but they're also entering the EU. And so the hotel owner was on his way out. He's like, there is a massive street party in Brasov. You want to come join us? I'm like, absolutely, I want to come join you. So we all jump in his car. We drive to Brasov, and this is just a massive street celebration. There's people everywhere. Everyone's dancing. They got big techno speakers. Techno is really big in Europe, so everyone dancing in the middle of the street. And there's fireworks. So like people are holding like sparklers and fountains, and there's no laws. There's no law. There's no firework laws. It's not like the U.S. where you can't shoot fireworks at a crowded party. You could do that in Europe. You could just do whatever you want. And so they're shoot off fireworks, and we danced the night away. And then we ended up going to a Romanian dance club to top the night off with trapeze artists and more techno music, and danced the night away. Okay. So that is my breaking into Dracula's castle story.
What did you see when you were inside the castle? Anything of
well,
note?
I wasn't able to access.
Is that how you got
door.
those hickeys on the side of your neck?
Oh, do I have hickeys? I don't think I do.
No, the fangs,
the bite
marks.
marks, the bite marks. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't think I have the itty hickeys. No, but my friends would not let me access the door. They said, we need to be long gone before you try to get into that door. So all my shots are from the courtyard breaking it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's still really cool to say.
That's a good story.
It's a great story. I mean, you had guards, you had dogs,
Yeah.
you had a knife,
Yeah. Techno music.
you had Dracula.
Yeah. Dracula.
I mean,
We had evade. So like if when you're sitting there and you're thinking about all the ramifications, it's like, what's going to happen? 3 Americans get thrown into Romanian prison and start an international incident. It's like, that's not going to be good. I was telling my aunt this story. She's like, did that seem like a good idea? It's like, well, in retrospective, it worked out. So I think in retrospective is a great idea.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I don't have anything quite as exciting as breaking into Dracula's castle. So it's all going to be downhill from here. But that's a great way to start the show off. I love it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah. So okay. So this is just going to be a chill stream. So if you've got any other exciting stories you want to share, just save those. We'll sprinkle those throughout the evening just to keep people entertained.
I got so many stories.
I do want to say I did not know that I could do updates and notes on my Give, Send, Go campaign until the lady you were talking about that's on her way to becoming a millionaire. I was researching that story and I saw she actually had a Give, Send, Go. And I was like, I wonder what she's raised. And I went there and I was like, oh, like $500,000. That's impressive. And she had all these little updates. And I was like, you can do updates on your Give, Send, Go campaign? I was like, I need to let everybody know what's been going on. So I did an update. Just briefly here. Some of this stuff is sensitive. We got through the first big deal, and now we're headed back into what I hope will be the final battle. We're making a big last push. So if anybody can support us, whether prayerfully or financially, hopefully this will be the last time we're in such a position where we need the help. But I'm going to post the link to that in my comments below. You can read the update if you want, or you can go there and donate, and then obviously keep lifting me and my kids up in prayer and all of that. But please, dire straits would probably be an understatement. We definitely need the help. So if you can, please consider donating to that. And if you need to, you can reach out to me and we can discuss it in private more. But having said that, I don't know. Did you say you watched the Reformed
first
Rangers?
debate? Oh, the what?
The Reformed Rangers?
Oh, yes, I did see your intro. It was in draft format, so I don't know how long you expanded it or anything.
So I'm going to play this real quickly for everybody. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I created a second channel, Idolkiller 2, the number 2, where I play more short form content. Idolkiller, my main channel, is still long form. It's live stream. It's like my atonement video, which was like an hour and a half, in-depth studies, chill streams like this, interviews, discussions, but more long form. And I had like short, punchy satire, parody, music, and stuff here on Idolkiller, the main channel. But I was noticing that the algorithm didn't know how to present my content because it treats short form and long form differently. So I created Idolkiller 2, which is now home to all of my short form content, which is really anything, I would say, in the realm of like maybe 5 minutes or 15 minutes or less, somewhere in there. So all my music is going there now, all of my short form content and YouTube shorts. But I was on Twitter the other day and I made a comment about how there's all these Reformed Rangers out here running around saying crazy things and defending Calvinism online. And that gave me an idea. And so I'm going to play this. It's only about 4 minutes long. So hopefully I don't lose too many of my audience here. I had a lot of fun making it. And I hope you guys enjoy this. And then we'll come back and we have some more stuff to talk about here.
Go! Go! Reform Rangers, go! Go! Reform Rangers, go! Go! Reform Rangers, Bible
The greatest problem in all of Scripture is this: if God is just, he cannot forgive you.
Go, go, Reform Rangers, go, go, Reform Rangers, go, go, Reform Rangers, Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
Has God predetermined every tiny detail in the universe, including all our besetting sins?
Yes.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
When a child is God responsible, and did he decree that?
Yes.
Reform Rangers, Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
God works all things after the counsel of his will, even keeping those kings who want to commit adultery from committing so. And when he wants to, he orders those to commit adultery when he wants to.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
God never does evil. But that is not to say that God does not create evil.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
The triune God has ordained whatsoever comes to pass. Every event that takes place in time is according to God's eternal, unconditional, immutable, and exhaustive decree.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
Understand this: when you go to give someone the gospel, because it's the truth, they can't believe it. Did you get that? Because it's the truth, they can't receive it. Because they are pre-programmed to believe lies.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's not a little angel. That's a viper in a diaper.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
So on the one side, you have people who say, oh, sorry, no faith, automatic hell for you. And then the people on the other side don't need it, automatic heaven for you. And I'm in the middle going, I think God's probably consistent here. And he's going to have elect infants. And then there are others who will not be.
Bible twisting Reform Rangers.
It was as if there was a cry from heaven, excuse my language, but I can be no more accurate than to say it was as if Jesus heard the words, God damn you. Because that's what it meant to be cursed, to be damned, to be under the anathema of the Father.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had at the very end it says in title designer, and then it says Idolkiller, and then it's like just joking. It was God's eternal decree.
Did you have
that was a lot of fun to make.
Did you have to explain to your children who the Power Rangers are?
They kind of have a vague idea. Yeah, you know, but like my son's really big into Godzilla, and so like he's got kind of some idea as far as where was it Saban got the footage for it, so he's kind of into it. But yeah, that was fun to put together. I get kind of tired of hearing Calvinists say some of the wacky, crazy, blasphemous things that they say. But what'll happen is I'll put these clips together and I'll put it out there, and then suddenly Calvinists will come in and they're like, "You're so full of hate," and I'm like, You're defending what we just heard. I hate the doctrine. I care for the people, you know, like I care for people that are affirming this, but I hate the doctrine. Like, but you're rushing in to defend this, and then you'll have some guys come in and they're like, "I am Reformed, and this is not what we believe at all. You need to read John Calvin and John Knox and Jonathan Edwards." And I'm like, Jonathan Edwards said it's just for God to damn babies. John Calvin said that we're like
No mere permission.
Yeah, no mere permission that like all of their unborn children are damned. Like, I mean, he goes into crazy detail, and like it's no better. I almost, and in fact, Drew, our mutual friend over at Provisionist Perspective, said I needed to include some scholastic reformers. The problem is I have to use AI for their voices. But if I can just play actual clips of Calvinists saying it, I think it's more impactful. But man, they make some crazy claims.
Yeah, the John Piper clip sounded like AI. That's how robotic it was. But it's a real clip.
But he's really a robot, though. No, I'm kidding. He's yeah. What I did edit that. Full disclaimer. He says, did God ordain everything that comes to pass? And then he goes, including dust motes and all besetting sins. And I edited out dust motes to make it a little more condensed, but I didn't alter the meaning at all, because like John Piper says, oh yes.
Yeah, and his son turned out to be a real wacko. And so his son's a media personality, and Facebook shorts are the worst. They always try to feed me just the worst stuff, and they keep feeding me John MacArthur's son talking about things. It's like I don't want John MacArthur's son to tell me anything. Stop it.
No, it's a messed up. Now, Eastgate Adoptionist, that was not a YouTube short. That's just shorter form content. So like under 15 minutes. If it's a short, it'll be within all of those parameters. But I'm putting everything 15 minutes and under over on Idolkiller too, just so the algorithm can better direct that content. But thank you for that. But yeah, it's a mess. And now, speaking of asinine and embarrassing claims, we've got some more here from our good friend, Dr. James White. This time, however, he's joined by the apologetic dog, Jeremiah Nordier, Edward Norton. What? How do you pronounce Jonathan's last name? Do you know? Nordier? I don't want to get it wrong. Like, I'm not trying to be snarky or anything.
Just mispronounce it, and in the comments they'll correct you. This always happens to me. Like, all my comments are, you mispronounced that word. I'm like, I'll try to be better.
I think it's Nordier, but if I'm wrong, it's not intentional. I think it is Nordier, but I could be wrong on that. But at any rate, a while back he had James White on his program following his debate with A.K. Richardson. See, I got AK's last name wrong too. A.K. Richardson. They debated on Romans 9. And so he brings James White on his channel, and they're talking about his debate with A.K. And I want you to listen and see if you can catch what comes up here. It's real subtle. I don't know. It's real quick, real subtle. See if you catch why I'm playing this clip here, okay? Pay attention. Like, you got it could go right past you if we're not paying attention.
Catholic. I was like, no, don't change it. I said, you said you'd rather be an open theist. I said, look, I'm not saying I'm making an infallible judgment on someone's soul, but I just said open theism has made God in their image. It's a different God. I mean, you got to believe in the right Jesus, and you got to believe in the right gospel of grace to have your sins forgiven. I just said, I can't endorse or be charitable to someone who says that God learns as man learns. And as you said, the Idolkiller, the weird dynamic omniscience claim is so he can say, I believe God knows the future, but he redefines God, he redefines future, and he redefines knowledge. So the alarm bells don't go off when you hear them.
Why did Amazon send me?
Oh my gosh. Why the ads? Come on. I don't want to watch the ads.
You gotta use Brave. I don't know if you could stream Brave into this.
I need to. I was downloading it before we went live. I almost did it. But it's a good time to stop there anyway, before White starts blabbering on about how much he loves me. So what was funny though, let me see. I don't know why it keeps defaulting there. What was funny though is Nordier says we make God in our own image. By affirming his self-revelation in scripture and not dismissing all of it as meaningless metaphor and anthropomorphism, we're making God in our own image. So what? When God says this is what I'm like. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. And we go, oh, that we're making God in our own image. But Jeremiah over here and James, who dismiss God's self-revelation in favor of a metaphysical precept like the pagan Platonists, they're not doing that. We're doing it.
So you want to know what's psychotic about this? Is it's like the Bible literally starts with God making man in his image. And so this claim is it's so antithetical to the Bible that this is their criticism and this is what they're hanging their hat on and this is what they find so heinous. Like it's the story of the Bible. It's like we are imagers of God, and they're getting real mad.
How dare you? How dare you say there are communicable attributes God imbued upon his image bearers? How dare that's heretical, Chris. There's no such thing as communicable attributes because God is eternally static and altogether different. What?
They care so much about it that they think any pushback on that is heretical. Just statements from the Bible. Yeah, statements from the Bible is what they take issue with. And this is not limited just to the image statement. All sorts of statements from the Bible. It's like, oh, you think you could save yourself? Well, people use that language all the time. Well, save yourself. You could save others. He's going to save this person.
Like you and your whole household.
That's just the language of the Bible. God having emotions, God thinking, God reacting, God changing. It's just the standard language. They hate the Bible. Like there's no other way to put it. It's like they really take very specific, particular issue with what the Bible states to such an extent that anyone who affirms these words is an outcast, is a heretic, is someone who is abandoning the faith. It's like, what faith is this that you've supplanted the biblical language with for whatever philosophy, wherever this is coming from, this value set? It's just not a biblical value set.
Well, it's like we had our favorite ex-Calvinist, now apostate, sadly, Tyler Vela was calling the God of the Bible pagan and a Hebraic megazeus because it was so diametrically opposed to his Platonist metaphysics and classical theist commitments. And then you had you covered this on your show recently with Jimmy Akin saying, oh, well, the writers of the Old Testament were just going through an open theist phase and they viewed God in pagan terms. And it's like, no, God in the Old Testament says, let me tell you, this is what I'm like. They wrote it down. And Jimmy Akin goes, they just viewed him like pagans. It's like, no, that you just completely jettisoned God's self-revelation.
Right. He's not saying that they're actually recording God's self-revelation. He sees it as authorial bias or authorial ad hoc or just ad-libbing or just inserting their own conceptions and interpretations. And to be fair, in the podcast, I pointed out this is not limited to just Calvinists or Catholics or whoever. Greg Boyd does this type of stuff as well when he tries to rewrite the Bible in Christological terms. And so he has this Christ-centric model in which all the Old Testament passages where God looks bad according to his estimation, they're just cultural artifacts that have to be re-understood in light of Christ. And so it happens on both sides of the aisle. And so we do need to take a little bit, be a little bit humble about it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's very interesting whenever you go, God says this, and sounds reasonable to me. And they say, well, you're making God in your own image. It's like, can you explain to me? Just walk me through how when he said, this is who I am and this is what I'm like, and we say, amen, show me, because maybe I am. Maybe I'm reading my bias into the text. Connect those dots for me. But they never do.
Do you like how this is a typical Calvinist thing to do, is to ascribe motivations to you? And so not only do they say what you're saying, but they try to get into your mind and explain why you're saying those things. And it's always in this uncharitable light. But to be perfectly honest, he actually said it in the stream that he's not going to be charitable. I don't know if you missed that part. He said, I'm not going to be charitable to these guys. It's like,
no,
okay.
He admitted it. He's like, I'm not going to engage with them charitably. I'm not going to, no, he admitted it. And what was so funny is he goes, well, we redefined the future. No, the future, we're talking about that realm of thing that hasn't come yet. Now, in his view, he's redefining literally everything and dismissing everything and collapsing it into Necessitarianism. And I've tried to address this with Jeremiah. I've even said, hey, if you're so confident about it, Nordier, why don't you debate me on the issue? And he's like, oh, like, no, Jeremiah doesn't want to do that. If his hero James won't take it, Jeremiah certainly isn't. But
so the Bible's a big book, and there's a lot of pages. There's a lot of different types of literature. There's a lot of different authors. It's spread over a couple thousand years. And if fatalism, if that was some sort of concept that they endorsed, you'd expect to find it somewhere rather than nowhere. These people just didn't have this idea, and coming and building this philosophical system that's nowhere explained in the text just because it sounds nice and it meets your systematic, it's like completely abandoning the mindset of this thick volume of text over hundreds, thousands of years of people writing down their thoughts and ideas, their theology. It's just not there. Like if timelessness was a thing, you would expect one verse instead of 0 verses. They got 0 verses, and so they really have to stretch. And they're like, okay, this verse, Jesus Christ is the same today, yesterday. That could be read kind of timelessly. God is the Alpha and Omega. Okay, if you look at it just the right way, God's time. Like, what are you talking? The Bible is huge. It's a really big book. So if you want to find examples of God changing his mind, it's just replete everywhere. Not only is the word Nakam used in conjunction with God like the 30, 40 different times, but then there's other stories where it just doesn't use the word, and it's just God reacting to circumstances and changing based on the events. It doesn't even have to use the word. So there's probably hundreds of references of God's changing his mind explicitly in the text. And there's nothing for timelessness. There's nothing for staticness. For their immutability proof text, it's always like half a verse, and then they skip reading the other half of the verse, and they skip reading the rest of the chapter, because the rest of the chapter is pretty critically condemning of whatever they're claiming from their half a proof texting. It's always like, oh, Balaam said this thing. It's like, what's the Balaam is your person? What's the context? What is he saying? What's the point? He's trying to. They got nothing. Nothing.
It's hilarious because Jeremiah says that we're redefining the future. We're redefining knowledge. No, what Jeremiah and James are doing is they're collapsing knowledge into a singular epistemic category of eternal fixity and necessity. They're denying any potentiality, right? What do you call a God who lacks potency? Impotent. So they're promoting an impotent deity. And so they're collapsing everything into a singular epistemic category, denying God knows possibilities, right? There's no such thing. If they're going to be philosophically consistent within their system, there's no such thing. And so when we come in and we go, oh, God knows inevitability, certainties, possibilities, potentialities. Like I can quote, what was it? Was it Caesareus of Arles? I think it was. He was the bishop that oversaw the Second Council of Orange. And he was like, God longs to overturn that fixed decree if only the sinner will repent. It's like the guy's speaking dynamic omniscience. It's a settled decree that God will overturn in response to men, just like he did with Nineveh, just like he does in Jeremiah, just like he does in Ezekiel. And this bothers them so much.
I like using Eli's sons as an example, because God takes his unilateral promise and figures out it's a bad idea to have this unilateral promise. He scraps the unilateral promise and replaces it with a bilateral promise. And so if it was always bilateral, you would need to scrap the unilateral one and replace it. It was a unilateral promise that because of changing circumstances, God switched to a conditional statement.
But it's so funny. It's like, well, here you have Jeremiah and James that will appeal to predestination. But because they affirm God is atemporal, they'll deny God has predestined anything. They'll appeal to God's foreknowledge, and they'll say that we deny it when we're affirming it. But because they deny that God has tense-based knowledge because he's atemporal, they're denying he has foreknowledge. So they're weaponizing terms they don't even believe in.
Yeah.
And then they accuse us of redefining terms. It's not very charitable.
Yeah. So Bavinck, I think in Bavinck's Reformed Dogmatics, he points out that technically there's no predestination because a predestination implies something in time bound. And since with God, nothing is time bound, the word doesn't accurately apply to what God does. And so like they admit it in their scholastics, in their scholastic literature, that foreknowledge, predestination, these types of things, they just categorically do not apply to the God that they present as being timeless and changeless and pure simplicity. But they appropriate these words and they pretend that they mean their Calvinism or whatever, and then they try to attack us for being not biblical. Oh, you didn't affirm this word that I actually don't believe in, that I redefine away from its ancient usage. So that's a funny thing I like to do, is I like to read English statements using their words like predestination, foreknowledge in different contexts, and have them guess which word it is. They don't know because
they can't tell you. and it's, but yet we're the ones that are redefining terms when we say, oh no, I believe God has foreknowledge. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've emphatically stated God knows the future perfectly and exhaustively, because exhaustive includes possibilities, and perfectly means he doesn't make epistemic mistakes. He knows possibilities as possible and certainties as certain. And they go, you can't say that. You can't say that. No, I can, because I'm using definitionary, like dictionary terms, dictionary definitions. They're not. And they want to co-opt the language. And it's like, no, Tim Barber in his debate with James, before he went into the debate, I was like, are you going to say God has perfect, exhaustive foreknowledge? He goes, oh yeah. I was like, good. Hit him over the head with it. And when he did, James was like, oh, didn't know how to respond, because he's like, oh, you're using terms and I can't fight you because you're actually keeping dictionary definitions and I'm not.
Right, because they're word thinkers and they talk in rhetoric, and they also apply the non-central fallacy whenever they're debating.
Yep.
It's like they'll try to take technical definitions of words that are not common usage, and then they'll switch it back and forth. Like Matt Slick tried to do to me. He's like, oh yeah, we can know things about the future, and those be still free will contingent. Like that your brother-in-law Jason is going to go home. We're talking in person. He's like, he's going to go home after this, contingent on him being like hit by a meteor or a car accident or something. I'm like, yeah, but look at what you're doing. You're taking what you're claiming in God, which is fatalistic foreknowledge, that nothing else could possibly happen, no matter what. Not even God himself can thwart what he knows will happen. And then you're trying to use our conception and our experience with our normal foreknowledge of future events. We know the future. We know what's going to happen, but it's not a fatalistic knowledge. Something else can happen, and we have experience with that. Something else probably is not going to happen. I'm going to go to work tomorrow. I've said on my program like 100 times, I'm going to go to work tomorrow. How many times have I been wrong? 0 times. Every single time my prophecy has come true. I'm not some great prognosticator of the future. Warren, I'm not omniscient. You might think so, Warren, but
well, the funny thing is even Augustine, who these guys tend to revere, or at least their camp often does, he even said that when we speak of time, it's improper to speak of time in 3 senses: past, present, and future, because the past doesn't exist, the present is now, and the future is really a conscious mind anticipating cause and effect. And he's like sowing and reaping. So he's like, it's not a settled thing. And yet, if I attack Augustine in those areas where he's saying like having intercourse with your wife and enjoying it's worse than hooking up with a prostitute, or that just punishment of unbelievers, and if I go in and I start criticizing his crazy claims, they go, oh, he's a saint. How dare you? He's Augustine. Who are you? And if I go in and I go, well, his theory of time was correct, and they're like, oh, heresy, rip the clothes, sackcloth and ash. How dare you? It's laughably inconsistent.
Yeah. So Augustine, he was here with the Manichaeans for 9 years, and he was unable to progress because he was obsessed with sex. Like sex was like his thing, and but he learned from them like dualism and good and bad. He moves on. He gets to the Platonists, and what do the Platonists teach? The Platonists also teach a kind of disdain of the material world. Plotinus is a great example. In the life of Plotinus, you read about this man who was like a vegetarian, was very weak. He didn't exercise because guess what? The material world is holding us down. It's something we need to abandon. We need to ascend from this material world. So Augustine starts reading the Platonists, and he kind of learns that he learns from the Platonists about God's immateriality, his infiniteness, all these Platonistic attributes that we've already talked about: simplicity, timelessness, unchanging, ineffability, these types of things. He learned all that from the Platonists, not the Manichaeans. He didn't learn, they had dualistic material substances. He learns these attributes of God from the Platonists, but what he's looking for is some sort of divine spark, something to get him over his addiction to sex, and that was what was holding him back. But after reading Platonism and then being introduced again to Christianity, because he grew up a Christian, but he got back into Christianity after Platonism. He's talking to Ambrose, he's talking to Simplicianus. They tell him to read the Bible in light of Plotinus, and he starts doing that. He comes to this realization that he can ascend the material world, and he does that, and he writes about in his confession, and it's the Platonists were looking for this transcendence, being able to go in a meditative state and then view the one and to ascend levels of reality. He's able to do this twice in the confession, and when he talks about it, basically he equates his conversion with Christianity as his giving up on sex, because sex is a dirty deed. Sex is the material world, it's material pleasure. Augustine sees the original sin in the Garden of Eden, the eating of the fruit of the tree, as a euphemism for sex. The original sin is sex in his mind. And fleeing from sex, this is his conversion to Christianity. This is what he thinks Christianity is. It's Platonism, fleeing the flesh, using Jesus Christ as the spark to ascend, and disdain of the physical, his physical lust that he's been laid down with, a slave to his entire life. He's able to transcend this through Platonistic Christianity.
And what's interesting is not only are you correct in what you're noting there, but like if you take a look at Pierre Franco Beatrice's The Transmission of Sin, not only does he touch on Platonism and Manichaeism as influences, but he also addresses Encratites and Messileans. And then, of course, I've recommended these books before, but if anybody's interested, Pierre Franco Beatrice, Transmission of Sin, a historical or an historical. That always bothered me. Why do you put an "an" in front of an H? Should be a historical presentation of Augustinianism and Pelagianism from the original sources. This was put out by Ralph Emerson and G.F. Wiggers. Don't start a gifts and go for that yet. The myth of
I'm drinking apple juice if anyone cares, so it's not alcohol.
Okay, cool. The myth of Pelagianism by Dr. Ali Bonner, and then The Story of Original Sin by John E. Toes. Those are
Johnny Toes.
Johnny Toes. Sounds like a gangster, doesn't it?
Sounds like something.
It sounds like a gangster from Al Capone's days. It's Johnny Toes. See, yeah, see, yeah. So check those out for anyone that wants to do deep dives into those. Those are great books to study. But let's continue listening to the unparalleled insight here that we get from these gentlemen. Oh, and I've got him muted.
Shredded a bunch of his stuff.
Image.
If you feel like your brain
Okay. All right. Thank you for this. Let's see. Now I've got Fox News pulled up. Hold on. I'm sorry, folks. Let's see if I can get this pulled up. Let's try this.
I just said open theism has made God in their image. It's a different God. I mean, you got to believe in the right Jesus, and you got to believe in the
Yeah, I
right
need an ad
gospel of
blocker.
grace to have your sins forgiven. I just said I can't endorse or be charitable to someone who says that God learns as men learn.
I can't be charitable to them.
Idolkiller. It the weird dynamic omniscience claim is so.
Look how he's struggling. He's rubbing his head. The cognitive dissonance hurts so bad that he has to rub his temples. Oh, this dynamic omniscience, a living God, hurts my head.
Watch the body language of James White. So James White does this thing where he argues by scoffing. It's like if he scoffs loud enough, that means someone's argument's wrong. If he's indignant enough, if he just pouts and he's just, oh, you said this thing, whoosh, 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 whoosh. That's his whole demeanor. And it was in the Tim Barber debate. It's in his other debates. This is how he debates. And so it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch his white supremacist debate. I just don't. But maybe I will, because if his argument is all pouting and throwing a hissy fit, it's like it's not going to go good for his side. It's not going to look very well. It's like I don't know.
No, it'll be interesting. I hope James does well in that debate. Kind of. I mean, is it wrong for me to wish they both fail? Like,
no, that's not wrong. It's like people are like, hey, do you support Israel or Palestine? I said, I just hope both teams have fun.
All right. So Christina asks, do open theists claim God learns? Now, if you have dynamic omniscience, you have changes in awareness. So like, let's say that God is grounding his knowledge of me in my present agency. Like, I'm not an eternal being, so he's grounding his knowledge of me in me as an existing agent. And I've developed a character and habits and like I love having sausage breakfasts on Sunday morning, right? And I went to the store and I bought all the sausage and I bought all the biscuits, and I'm going to cook. I plan on cooking sausage biscuits for my kids tomorrow morning. God knows it's still possible that I wake up and don't feel like doing it, or that I might make pancakes instead. But he knows it's a real possibility. When I have made pancakes, God knows Warren has made pancakes. It's no longer possible for me to make those sausage biscuits. Things change. God knows reality as it is. This is going to be rephrased by detractors and stigmatized as God learning, but this is just changes in being able to track. Like, it would be like saying to know that the clock goes from 3 o'clock to 3:01 was God learning, because he knows it is now 3:01 when he used to think it is now 3 o'clock.
So let me read Deuteronomy 8:2. I got that pulled up. It's
Go for it.
It's a Bible verse.
You want to put it on the screen?
I don't know how. It's
okay, hold on. You're at let me pull this up. This is a chill stream, bro. This is a chill stream, bro.
It says connect to YouTube, and then I could
Bible
post
Gateway. And you said it's under, what is it? Deuteronomy
8:2.
8:2.
Okay.
Any preferred translation?
The ESV is fine. I don't know.
Ooh, gross. Okay.
No, so here's the thing. Okay, so the ESV is a modern translation. They incorporate Dead Sea Scroll text into the Old Testament, into how they translate the Old Testament. And so I think the Dead Sea Scrolls are more accurate than the Masoretic text. And so you have examples like the sons of God versus the sons of Israel in one key text in Genesis. And so when I wrote my book, God is Open, I used, for all Old Testament quotations, I used the ESV, and for all New Testament quotations, I used the New King James, because the New King James, of course, is going off of Textus Receptus or majority text. And so I think the Byzantine texts are probably a lot better than the critical text. The critical texts are all Alexandrian texts, which I always find an issue with. And so I do think the ESV for the Old Testament has some actual benefits.
Okay. So you said, let me zoom in on this.
Okay, and you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. God said, I took Israel and I brought them through this trial in order to figure out what they were going to do, who they worshiped, these types of things. God tests to know. And so if you want to call that learning, that sounds reasonable to call that learning. God learns, but is it derogatory to say God learns? It's like when you learn about your children, you interact with them and you play around with them, you wrestle with them to see how they're going to do. You hold them down. It's like, oh, how is he going to get out of here? That's not derogatory. It's not a bad thing.
Well, one of the things too that I've been looking into is the problem of placing all of God's knowledge in his essence, into his very being, because this collapses into everything being co-eternal, co-divine. We all become an aspect of God, and everything becomes necessary, and it actually denies divine freedom. If God is eternally known, Chris was going to drink apple juice tonight. God was not free to do otherwise. It's not just that Chris wasn't free to do otherwise, which is a problem if you want to affirm libertarian free will and individual agency and personal responsibility, but it actually denies divine freedom because God could not do other than what he's eternally known would happen. But here's where the church has historically argued. Those things that God knows about himself, his own character, those would be eternal. Like God knows himself eternally. But those things that he knows about contingent creations and contingent agents, he knows by way of his energies, not his essence. So those are ever changing because he's relational. And there's nothing there that detracts from his essence because his knowledge of us is expressed through his energies and we are contingent. And so by placing his knowledge of us in testing to know, observing, he still knows all possibilities. He still knows his own plans. He still knows our own hearts and intentions, but he's not knowing it as a settled, eternally fated thing. So this doesn't diminish his knowledge, but it does allow him divine freedom without detracting from him. And so when you have a synthesis of dynamic omniscience with the essence energy distinction that you find in orthodoxy, I think you have an unbeatable biblical, philosophical, and historical argument for the freedom of God. And so that's where I land on this right now, if that makes sense. But yeah, the Bible talks about God testing. It talks about God inspecting. Biblical omniscience is God being all-seeing or all-observing, like nothing escapes his glance. And so you can't have biblical omniscience devoid of observational experience. It doesn't work unless you want to go into a strong Platonist or classical theist metaphysic that again dismisses God's self-revelation because it exalts that metaphysic. If you're going to take the Bible for what it says, you're going to have to go this way, in my opinion, at least.
So he can say, I believe God knows the future, but he redefines God, he redefines future, and he redefines knowledge. So you don't, the alarm bells don't go off when you hear.
So Chris, I don't know why it keeps resetting to that. The potter, Jeremiah 18.
Mm-hmm.
He goes and he sits down at his wheel, and he wants to create a particular vessel.
He's not a very good potter. He
gets the clay out, and
he's terrible. He mars it. He's just an awful potter.
Oh, stop!
Is that what the parable's about?
So the potter gets the clay, sticks it on his wheel, and he's got an idea for what he wants to make, and he starts forming it. But due to defects in the clay, it mars in his hand. So what does he do? He repurposes it. It doesn't mean that he's not a good potter. It means the materials he was working with, just like we see Jesus expressing in the parable of the sower, where some seed fell on the rocky place, some fell on the road, some fell among the weeds, some was snatched by the birds. God is working with the materials And any sort of defect or flaw in them does not reflect on him, but he is good and he wants to bring about something good. And then when it mars, he repurposes it. But the very idea of repurposing shows you that it's not an eternal purpose.
Right. So Bob Enyart, in one of his debates with the Calvinists, he's like, oh, did the potter finish what he originally set out to do? The Calvinists wouldn't answer the question. It's like, we're not even to the interpretation part of it. We're just explaining what's happening in this story, and they don't want to engage with what's happening. It's
no,
because
the biblical God terrifies them because he is free and living.
Because of the implications.
You can't put him in a box under your bed if you're talking about the living God of Scripture, but you can if it's the God of Platonist metaphysics.
Yeah. So you got a couple Canadian super chats.
Let me take a look here. Let's see what we got here. So first off, thanks to Taters here. He says Babylon B put out a video called Woke Jesus. In part of the video, Jesus goes over all the different genders, and one of them is tater gender. Tater gender, where you grow potatoes out your backside. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you, Tater Bible Podcast.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. He made that comment before the live stream went, and I said, thanks, Taters. And so that's what he's referring to. I don't want it to look like he's insane, and that comment was completely unrelated to anything that happened before. But that is pretty funny. Floral says, review Matt Slick's latest stream from April 30th. I started watching that, and I may do something on that tomorrow. It was awful. Eastgate Adoptionist, thank you for the super. You helped to write this question. If Calvinism holds that we don't need to repent to be elected, what is the broad path to destruction? Is there anything broader than saying we don't have to overcome our old selves to be saved? Yeah, I mean, Christians are overcomers in the sense that we rule over our desires and appetites. We submit ourselves to Christ. We overcome the world, and we do all of that by submitting to him and following in his likeness and an example. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at Calvinism, and depending on your flavor, whether it's like an infra or superlapsarian, but even then, I mean, most of them are going to put that debate in logical moments rather than temporal ones. It still all collapses.
They're going to say the broad path to destruction is just whoever God just took the broad amount of people and sent them to destruction.
Yeah, it's just from eternity. The path is the one God put you on. That's it. But thank you for the super. And then the Sanctuary, thank you for those Canadian bucks. What do you call? Is it a Canadian dollar? What do you call a Canadian? Is it a moose?
Meese.
Thank you for the super. I have been reading through Exodus this month, and God changes his mind all the time. Absolutely. That's the biblical God, though. That's the biblical God. So you want to make sure you make that clarification, because when you're talking to classical theists like James, they may think you're trying to talk about his God, and that'll upset him. So make sure you say the biblical God changes his mind. Yeah. And Dwayne, thank you for the super.
Look at, like, is your whole viewer base based in Canada?
It's
what kind of Canadian poll do you got? I
am the American Ryan Reynolds.
Do you know how you spell Canada? Canada.
Canada. Thank you, Dwayne, for the $5.
My sister lives in Canada. I could make some Canadian jokes.
Oh, I'd move to Canada in a heartbeat if I.
Oh, would you? Because they're very tax, anti-gun, anti-Christian.
No, I meant illegal. I'm going to cross over illegal and just go live off the land in the woods.
Okay.
Yeah, enjoy the. I better stop talking. I'm going to get myself
that guy who lived in that school bus. I don't know what that guy.
Oh yeah, that was a tragic story, but it was a great movie. Chris, do you prefer the RP text or the HF majority? I haven't heard much in relation to textual criticism and its impact on Calvinism.
And so he's just talking about different variants of the majority text. I don't think that like really super matters. I don't think they're that much different, but there are some differences within critical text and the majority that have some implications about theology. There's a book of life versus tree of life you see in Revelation. There's a statement of I think it's in Acts where in the majority text it's like a 2-word verse, and in the critical text it's about like God foreknowing things. I think it's in like Peter's speech. I'd have to look it up, but there are certain implications based on what text you're reading and who's making what point where that might affect the Calvinism debate. And one thing the Calvinist translators do with the ESV, which grinds my gears a little bit, is in Jeremiah 18. We're talking about Jeremiah 18. And so the parable is actually interpreted. So it's not guesswork. We don't have to sit there like a scholarly sit together like, I think the potter represents like you don't have to it's actually explained in the text. There's no guesswork. And so the interpretation of the parable is that God reacts to changing circumstances appropriately and changes his mind. And so it uses 2 words, the Hebrew. God will not do what God said he would do, and God will not do what he thought he would do. And the ESV, which is a Calvinist translation, it's a good translation. It's fine to use, but it's a Calvinist translation, so you kind of have to take it a little with a grain of salt. But they use the same word. Yeah, they're parallel concepts. If you say you're going to do something and then not do it, and if you think you're going to do something and not do that, that's basically the same thing. And the Hebrew does this thing where it takes concepts and they put concepts in parallel. And what it means is that they're emphasizing the totality, the completeness of this idea. And it's fine to translate it in both instances as the same word, but I think you're missing some of the force of it. God is not going to do what God said he was going to do and not do what he thought he was going to do. I think the ESV does intended to do something like that. But like I asked Matt Slick multiple times, like 3 or 4 times, what does it mean in that verse? God will not do what God thought he was going to do. And there's no answer. There's crickets. They got nothing for that.
Yeah, I mean, when you think that God doesn't think and that all of his knowledge is eternally static, and you read a verse where God changes his mind, that he tests to know, or that he doesn't do what he intended in response to his creation, you go, well, this does, I don't know how to interact with that. Well, it's because they don't really care so much about the Bible other than to give false legitimacy to their presuppositions. You know, I've called it before like a paper mache philosophy. It's just you rip the pages out and you paste it onto your metaphysical grid and you call it a day. You don't really care what the Bible's trying to convey. But let's get back to old Jimmy Blanco here, the Great White Hope. Let's hear what he has to say about this.
So wait.
Being lazy.
Oh
wait.
My gosh.
Is he the Great White Hope? He's arguing against, I don't know.
I'm having
technical
numerous ads.
You're having boomer issues.
Well, the problem is that I'm broke as a joke. Like I said,
Okay.
I'm battling and getting ready to go back, so I can't afford YouTube Premium.
Well, here's what you do.
The attorneys bleed you dry, man.
Download an exe file called Open Video Download. They have a version 2.5.5. You could paste in YouTube links, and it'll direct download those and any video from like any site. It's like a video scraper. And so you could put those in and it'll just download it. Then you'll have it readily available on your desktop. No ads needed.
Yeah, I need to do that. What kind of rinky-dink outfit are we running here, Chris?
Right. Listen, if you want to know how to scrape internet media, I'm your guy.
There we go.
Future, and he redefines knowledge, so you don't the alarm bells don't go off when you hear them.
Yeah, when I first encountered him.
So he said none of the alarm bells go off when you listen to me, but he still objects.
Years ago, I shredded a bunch of his stuff on the dividing line until I realized I was wasting my time with him.
Okay, what James says?
I'm wasting my time with them.
James says he shredded me on the dividing line. Here's what James did. I said, here's an entailment of your belief. Evil is a necessary, or God is dependent upon evil in order to accomplish his purpose, because James has said that like God has to do these things in order to express his attributes, right? So I'm making a criticism. I'm saying, well, an entailment of that claim is then that God is dependent and reliant on evil, that it's essentially an attribute that he's expressing in creation. And so what James did was he took me saying that and he edited it, and then he presented it like I was teaching it as my belief. And then he goes, these guys are saying evil, God is necessary of evil, evil is an attribute. And I'm like, and then I called him out and I said, James, you're strawmanning and misrepresenting me. Like you owe me a retraction. And he said, well, it's impossible not to strawman you, and I'll retract nothing.
So
this is what James calls shredding me.
Yeah, you might be misrepresenting him a little bit. Because he wouldn't say it like that. He'd say, you're teaching that God thinks that you missed all the vocal pauses that elongate him into insufferable.
What he said was these guys are saying God is dependent upon evil. Like he had those inflections, like he was going, and I was like, you literally took me saying that's an entailment of your view.
Well, yeah,
and you're presenting it like I'm actually teaching it as my own.
He shredded you.
He shredded me.
You were just devastated. And
that's why he's ran from a formal debate for years.
Right.
And that's why when Tim Barber went to debate him and used a lot of the arguments, not all of them. I'm not trying to take any thunder from Tim. Tim stands on his own, but Tim shredded James.
He wouldn't debate me. So he said specifically he would not debate me, and he's not going to debate you. And so he debated unknown, and he got shredded. And so what's he debating nowadays? White supremacy in the Bible. And so after he's like, I'm not going to debate open theists anymore. It's no use. It's like
he keeps getting his rear end handed to him. He has to wonder why God eternally decreed for him to lose so publicly. You know, it must be infuriating. But this, he says, he shredded me. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, you had a church reach out to me and try and schedule a debate. I accepted, and you ran like a coward. And then he told him he wouldn't even shake my hand. And I'm going, you've lied about me for years, and I'll publicly debate you. I'll keep it professional. I'll even not bring up infant damnation. We can put it in the contract. I'll debate you with one arm tied behind my back. And he still wouldn't take me up on it. But he shredded me. This guy who believes that God damns babies and decreed every instance of child grape shredded me. And I'm nobody. I'm nobody, right? But if James can't handle me, that I think that says a lot, because I'm not all that special.
He is a narcissist, and so when he does reach humiliation, like it affects him on a very deep personal level. And so this is what we're seeing as him reeling back from getting stung and getting humiliated, and him getting a more accurate self-perception of himself. He's trying to mentally deal with these things.
Amy says pink Power Ranger emotions.
So one of the things is like he has a circle of followers he's built up over the years. And so he's created a bubble around himself to give him positive reinforcement, like just endless praise. And so he's got a group of sycophants who just love every word he says. And so you could get into this kind of, I don't know, this where you're not very, you stop thinking critically. Like, for example, the Tim Barber debate, he said he prided himself. Oh, I didn't even prepare for that. Yeah, it shows you didn't prepare. It's like you have so much hubris. You think you could walk into a debate blind, just make up arguments and win this debate. It's like, it's not going to happen. You don't have the skill set. You're not as smart as you think you are. You just got humiliated in public because you're lazy and stupid.
And he's ridiculing Tim for preparing. Like, how dare you research and prepare? You did an injustice to the audience, Tim.
I got so many Calvinist comments on my debate with Matt Slick. They said he read his intro, his opening, and like, what? How is that a criticism? That every single debater writes their openings Like, and then they do rehearsed speech, and then they read through it. It's like every single time. But to the Calvinist, if they lose a debate, they have to look for reasons they lost, and if it's the other person prepared, it makes them look silly. But it's what they have to hang their hat on. They got nothing else.
No, it's really it's pathetic, is what it is. You know, like what he did with Leighton in the Romans 9 debate. He goes, "Oh, you're attacking my presuppositions, and you're putting Romans 9 in context, and I'm going to appeal to the moderator. That's not how you exegete." And then he goes and debates A.K. Richardson, and he goes, "Well, first let's discuss my presuppositions and the context, because this is how you exegete." And it's like, you are the biggest two-faced, hypocrite, dishonest theologian on the internet today, and you're a coward. And you're gonna. This is how you're gonna end. This is how you're gonna end your debate career.
Moderator,
these Lutherans, these racist Lutherans. You know,
please help me, moderator. My debate opponent's not being very moderator. Please, like, what? Stop it. Stop. James White.
He's gonna tell us. He's gonna tell us how he ripped me to shreds, and I'll probably get another ad because we've waited so long. Let's see what happens here.
But one of the really humorous things, and it was humorous, was he was trying to avoid identifying himself as an open theist. And so he did an interview with John Sanders. Now, my first debate on open theism was at Reformed Theological Seminary.
Okay, I don't know how many times. There, did it again. I don't know how many times I got to say this. I place dynamic omniscience within open theism. It's an open view, because it's denying that the future is eternally settled. I don't think I've ever debated that. But I've said I think it's a specific metaphysical commitment within the open position, because here we're talking about like different epistemic categories of knowledge and all that. So I've always nuanced it as a subcategory or something within the open camp. But I've never said it's not an open view. Like, it very clearly is an open view. But when I was interviewing John Sanders, he goes, "Well, I just treat them as the same." And so James is going in and going, oh, it was so funny. Like, Warren got schooled. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, are you this stupid, James, that you don't understand the very basics of this position? Like, I mean, he's either incredibly dishonest, or he's struggling on a cognitive level that maybe it's declining due to age. Like, I don't know how to take this charitably.
I think he's a compulsive liar.
Yeah, but it's like nobody's ever denied that dynamic omniscience is an open position. I've always said it's within the open camp. I've argued that I think it's a specific thing in and of itself with its own metaphysical commitment, because within open theism you can talk about the future is 100% open. God doesn't know what's happening 5 seconds from now. Like, there's different expressions within open theism. And so with trying to add precision, I've always tried to make dynamic omniscience very clear in its metaphysical commitment. But James is just being dishonest here, and he tries to get hay out of it. And it's so bizarre that people fall for this.
Is it?
Well, in his camp, you've got sycophants. I did it again. Sycophants. Just eating up whatever it is he's belching out. But yeah.
Florida. And it was with John Sanders. And he's also an inclusivist. We had done a debate the night before.
I'm an
inclusivist. On inclusivism. Yeah. And then we debated more formally open theism. And it's interesting. I also debated him on Unbelievable on that. He was much, much, much more aggressive years later. And the reason was he had lost his job because he had debated me the first time.
Oh.
So... Yeah. There were people in the audience that were on the board of the school he was teaching from, and they were stunned that he believed stuff like that. So he lost a job. I said, "Oh, okay, that wasn't my fault." Okay, I mean, what can I say? But the point is, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, believe it or not, the first time I learned about open theism wasn't one of your debates, but so in Jonesboro. Church of Christ are everywhere, right? This is how I learned about it, is in real time, sharing the gospel, realizing we're saying all the same terminology, but we mean different things. When I'm trying to quote Ephesians 2:8 and 9. They're trying to quote Acts 2:38. And I eventually interacted with a Church of Christ preacher. He wasn't an elder. He was a preacher. He was real insistent upon that. But he was an open theist. And I was like, tell me what that means. And I remember what he said. He goes, well, just know I'm trying to be consistent. And I just remember what he said at the very onset. And his justification was God is so sovereign that he can choose not to know certain things. And then he would say, remember, the Bible says that he remembers your sin no more. So that was my first encounter with open theism, was actually with the Church of Christ.
You look like you want to comment on that, Chris.
Yeah, they're co-opting language. So I wrote an article on godisopen.com called The Calvinist Dictionary, and I just go over words that the Calvinists have appropriated and made to mean something completely opposite. And so we just had elections in this country not long ago, and the Calvinists always talk about, oh, God's elect. Like, in what country, in what language does election mean anything close to what the Calvinists claim? The Greek word for elect is just choice, like the best. You pick the best stones to build your bridge. It's not this like predestination from all eternity selecting.
No,
there's nothing about you that God chooses arbitrary. Nothing like that. Elect just means like choice, the choice grapes. Predestination. So predestination is they want it to be this timeless, eternal decree. It's just specifying something in advance. If I use the quote from church fathers that talk about when the Jews are specifying an answer to a question and they're recalling this event, that's the word they use. It's not American predestination in which all things are set. It's just like someone made a choice previously at some point about some subject. Anthropomorphism, they've made up this concept that it's not a literary concept where you could just say, oh, that's anthropomorphic. No, that's not a thing. That's not anthropomorphism is a framing device for modern fiction, but it's not just a way to just dismiss things the Bible says. The Bible uses simile, the Bible uses metaphor, the Bible uses idioms, yes, but you can't just dismiss something by calling it anthropomorphism. Sovereignty. Okay.
Here's an interesting example of predestination. Okay. I was in middle school, like we're talking like 5th or 6th grade. And I would ride my bike to and from school most days. And I'm over at the bikes and I'm getting ready to get my bike. And I'm trying to like fiddle with my lock, and I get it. And I stand up and I turn around and I'm walking in front of the door, and a kid comes out, walks up and just punches me right out of nowhere. I've never met this kid before. And so I stand up and I was like, what was that for? And he said, well, I told my friend I was going to hit the first kid I saw when I came outside. Now he had predestined this event, but I just happened to be there. And then of course it turned into a really nasty fight. And I don't think he predestined what came after that.
Well, but, good. I was hoping that was the end of the story. Like,
yeah. But my point is he told his buddy, I'm predestining when I go outside, I'm hitting the first kid I see, you know. But we tend to invest all of this with certain metaphysical commitments that it's eternal, it's unchangeable, it's immutable. And it's like the very term pre is temporal and is off limits to the God that they describe. But they'll say that we've made God in our own image. Well, they've made God completely other than the way that he's revealed himself in Scripture.
So here's a word. This is a pro-aristo, and this is in Plutarch. Here's the English translation. Let so much suffice for general occasion of freedom of speech. There are also particular occasions which our friends themselves furnish, that one who really cares for his friends will not neglect but make use of. Which word is predestination? Pro-arizo. It's their friends talking. Their friends are specified, or they're furnishing, which our friends themselves furnish. There are occasions which the friends furnish, ideas, occasions for freedoms of speech. Yeah, previously it's not anything to do with Calvinist predestination. They've co-opted the language, they co-opted the word. And Roger Olson points out that even the word sovereignty is idiosyncratic in the Calvinist definition. Like, in what world, in what city, with what state, with what king does sovereign mean micromanagement of all molecules? It never means that. Sovereignty means that you have rulership, you delegate, you're the ultimate authority. You're not micromanaged, controlling everything. Every single word that they use to mean their theology in the Bible is co-opted. And so it's rich that they are trying to levy the accusation that we're co-opting their philosophical words. That's it. That's it. We are taking their philosophical language that's not in the Bible and then making that mean something else. That's really what really gets their goat. When they take biblical language and make it mean something completely different. Jesus tells us what it means to be chosen, what it means to be elect. He gives us a parable of the wedding feast, explaining how one becomes chosen and how one becomes elect. And it's not Calvinistic, fatalistic determination.
No. And they'll get all upset and angry, oh, you're redefining what it means to be omniscient. No, omniscient means all-knowing, right? What you're doing, and here's the subtle shell game that these guys engage in. No one denies that God knows the future. That's not even the debate. That's the way that they try to frame it. The debate is over the nature of the future God knows. It would be like nobody denies that the potter knows the clay. But does he know it as currently malleable, or does he know it as eternally settled as a cigarette ashtray that was glazed and painted yellow? Well, no, he knows it as malleable. He's got his hands in it. He's working it now. He knows the various things he can produce from it. And they'll go, oh, well, you're saying God doesn't know the clay. No,
I always imagine like a spittoon or something is what he ended up with.
Or one of those with a chamber pot, when you're dealing with Calvinists.
Yeah. And well, Warren McGrew interviewed John Sanders, and when he gave him his little personal dynamic omniscience thing,
so watch watch that body language in James White. This guy is a psychopath. Like he's like, well, there's a little about it. He only argues through he's superior to everyone else. Everyone else he talks about is beneath him. They're not worthy of respect. They're not worthy of listening to. All he has to do is scoff, and he thinks he won an argument. Watch his body language.
Yeah, it's very, very evident.
Sanders just goes, no, it's open theism. And I was listening to it while riding the bike in the dark. I remember out in Sun City, and I just started goofing. I imagine I probably look pretty silly riding on the road doing that. But yeah, it was like stop playing games. You're talking about open theism. You might want to try to come up with your own little thing to make it your niche stuff. But you're talking open theism. And
okay, so Christina in the comments says White isn't a psychopath, but he is a narcissist. That's true. His story was about him riding the bike in the middle of probably nowhere and him thinking about what other people think. When I'm driving around, I don't look at a bicyclist and and watch their facial expressions. In his story, he is the focus of observation of random people as he rides his bike. It's crazy.
In the dark.
He's
guffawing over something that I said that he misunderstood, and he's worried that people are going to think less of him.
In his story, people are watching him bike ride. Random observers. I don't look around at bike riders. I don't say. I'm just like, get out of the way. What are you doing on the road?
I get so fed up because they always make my car bounce whenever I run them over, and I get a little motion sick.
You just got to adore them. And like nobody's looking at you, James White. Nobody's watching you ride this bicycle.
Nobody's watching.
So yes, Christina's right. He might be a psychopath, maybe, but he is a narcissist.
100%. So check this out. Okay, so let's read. I was going to bring this up later, but let's do this now. Let's just pivot just real quickly to something Dr. John Sanders has said, and you tell me if you see significant difference between what I've been articulating and what he has written. So he says, finally, the omniscient God knows all that is logically possible to know. I call this dynamic omniscience, in that God knows the past and present with exhaustive, definite knowledge, and knows the future as partly definite, closed, and partly indefinite, open, God's knowledge of the future contains knowledge of what God has decided to bring about unilaterally, that which is definite, knowledge of possibilities, that which is indefinite, and those events that are determined to occur, example, an asteroid hitting the planet. Hence, the future is partly open or indefinite and partly closed or definite. God is not caught off guard since God has foresight, anticipating what we will do. Also, it is not the case that just anything may happen, for God has acted in history to bring about events in order to achieve his unchanging purpose. Graciously, however, God invites us to collaborate with him to bring the open part of the future into being. Now, that I don't see any disagreement with this at all. Like I've never argued differently. And in fact, I've had conversations both on air and then via email or Facebook or whatever. I think maybe even a few phone calls talking with Dr. Sanders. And I'd say, hey, Dr. Sanders, here's an example. Now, I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I'm just going to give you the summary of the conversation. So if he wants to disagree with me, he's free to do so. I don't think he will. But I said, hey, I was explaining this to a Calvinist, and they said, I don't understand your position. I said, so let me put it this way. Are you saying God doesn't know anything about the future at all? And he goes, no, absolutely not. I go, okay. Let's say a car is careening towards a cliff. God knows at a certain mile per hour and with all the conditions that there's a point in which that car can stop and the driver can exit safely. But he also knows there's a point of no return in which once that car passes over that, the speed, velocity, and conditions are going to carry it over the edge, right? He goes, yes. I said, now, once we reach a point in time where that car has passed the point of no return, that's a settled event, right? It's going over the cliff unless God uses some sort of miraculous divine act there to like swoop in and maybe have 1,000 angels go and pick up this car and carry it away. But that's a settled act, right? And he goes, well, yeah. I go, but it hasn't happened, right? It hasn't happened yet. We may be talking 30 seconds before it careens over the edge, but that's a settled event. And he goes, well, yes. I said, so that you're agreeing that the future has settled events then? Well, yes. So we've had these conversations where I've probed in depth on his views. I've given him different scenarios. We've talked back and forth, and I'm just like, this is just dynamic omniscience. I don't see why the Calvinists are rephrasing. And then it hit me. Either they don't understand, or they do, and they're being intentionally dishonest. So again, with James, I think this is a case of intentional dishonesty. I don't think this is him not getting it. I think he's just a dishonest liar.
It could be extreme mental laziness. I'm going to put that on the table as well.
That's possible. But given everything that I've engaged with the man for all these years and his behavior, no, I think he's just a coward and a liar.
If anyone, the John Sanders debate was good. It was useful. But if you want to see the real danger of open theism, see the debate I did with that. And for some reason, his name just escapes me all the time.
Danger.
Too. The open theist I debated in Denver, Colorado.
So he's saying the debate he had with Bob Enyart was dangerous.
Okay.
It was dangerous for James.
Well, it's interesting because it devolved into Trinitarian issues. I don't know if you recall that at all, but this is why I'm blocked by James White on Twitter, is because I asked him one question: was the human part of Jesus, was that God? And he's like, he blocks me. He doesn't want to answer that question because, of course, the Calvinist is no, because God is simple. God is has no parts. God is immutable. God is outside of time, timeless. So the human part of Jesus cannot be God. Jesus is 100% God, 100% man, but the 100% man part is not 100% God because that would violate their metaphysics. So instead of answering the question, he blocked me. And so Enyart was pushing on these factors about God becoming man and how becoming man is a change. And it's very dangerous to James White because He doesn't want to explain his complicated, seemingly heretical views of the Trinity, in which the God part of Jesus is not the same as the man part of Jesus. So Calvinists tend to avoid this part of the debate. And so usually they'll just devolve into, oh, you don't understand the hypostatic union. It's like, if yeah, I understand it. That's why I'm asking my questions. And so the reason you're not answering the questions is because you understand that the answer to these questions are going to make you look really bad.
Yes.
And so that's what happened in the James White Bob Enyart debate.
Here's the issue. You have the Son existing prior to creation in a relationship with the Father and Holy Spirit, not incarnate. Then you have the Son becoming incarnate, dying, resurrecting, and ascending bodily, incarnate, to be at the right hand of the Father in a realm where they're claiming is all temporal. No sequence, no change, static perfection. So all of a sudden you have the static frozen God existing next to the Father, existing next to the static frozen Son, and with the static frozen Holy Spirit in a single act of pure actuality. And then you have the Son blipping away and blipping back bodily. Nobody pretend it was a change. Like there was no change that occurred here. It completely decimates the resurrection of Christ, the ascension, bodily ascension of Christ decimates his view of an all-temporal God in an all-temporal realm. But then it gets even worse. You go, well, Jim, let's call you Jim. Jimothy, we're all going to live in eternity. Well, not all of us, just you. Obviously, I'm a reprobate and not elect. But Jimothy is going to exist for eternity with God, in relationship with God.
Would God want that?
But here's the thing.
Okay.
He's going to be existing in a relationship. When we see him, we'll be like him, for we'll see him as he is. We'll see him as he is, for we will be like him, is what it says. Does Jimothy think that he's going to become atemporal and frozen in a static act of like pure relationship for eternity?
He thinks that we're not going to be able to experience God as is. And so we'll never, so in Platonism, you got the different levels of existence. You got the soulish or the material world. You got the realm of the intellect. And then on top of that, you have the realm of the unchanging one. And so in the realm of the unchanging one, God is ineffable. He's simple. That means he's partless. He has no predicates. He has no relations. And so the closest that Augustine could hope to get to was the realm of the intellect. You can only get visions of the higher realms. And Augustine claims to have reached that transcendence at least once in his life. But we're not going to ever experience God in God's substance. So in the Calvinist model, we're going to be experiencing like a Jesus avatar in whatever eternal state we get to. We're never going to transcend and meet and interact with the one or the God substance. So this is not things they explicitly teach, but it's something they have to hold because of their priors and their metaphysics about who God is and what it is. And it's just normal Platonism. This is what Plotinus writes about.
Well, here's another thing that I wanted to pull up here. I made this short based off of an appearance that I had on Vocab Malone's show, like I think it was like 2 years ago or so, in which I explained the 3 basic tenets for mere dynamic omniscience. And each one of these are orthodox. And so I was trying to explain it to Vocab, and I don't know if it was you or Drew or some other guys were like, man, you need to turn that into a short. That's really good. So I put this short out. It's less than a minute. This is what I got. Basically, to summarize dynamic omniscience, we need to say 3 things. We need to say first that God is omniscient. He knows all of the facts. The second point we have to affirm, basically, sorry, hit the wrong button. I was trying to pause it. So again, the first point of dynamic omniscience is God is omniscient. Okay? They'll say, oh, he's denying God is omniscient. No, like that's rule 1 of Fight Club. Right? Like that's rule 1 of dynamic omniscience. God is all knowing. Nobody's denying that God is all knowing.
Their problem is that you're using the word that they want to use to sway, that has emotional appeal, that resonates with audiences, but you're taking it, you're using it towards your view. That's their real problem.
Yep.
Is that they can't use word thinking to influence their audience if you are using that same language.
Yep. That's our word. You're not allowed to use it. Well, God is all knowing. Well, you don't believe that. Yes, I do.
Moderator, save me.
Moderator. So God is all knowing. That's rule one. But let's look at the 3 points real quick. To summarize dynamic omniscience, we need to say three things. We need to say first that God is omniscient. He knows all of the facts. The second point we have to affirm is the dynamic theory of time, sometimes known as presentism. Revelation, where God describes himself as the God who was, who is, and who will be. He speaks of himself in tense terms. And so I said, the second thing we have to affirm, right? To affirm dynamic omniscience, I laid out three things you have to affirm. To affirm dynamic omniscience, I'm not coming in as a totalitarian ruler. I don't have a gun to anybody's head. I don't have it kidnapped their significant other and said, if you don't affirm these things, I'll send them back to you in a box. I'm saying if you want to affirm dynamic omniscience, these are the three things you have to affirm. God is omniscient. Well, that's orthodoxy. The presentist ontology of time, that's orthodox. And then the third thing you have to affirm, if you want to affirm dynamic omniscience, is that at some point in the life of God, there is a moment where the future is alethically open, meaning there's some moment in God's life where the values about future contingent propositions are not completely settled. God is free. He wasn't necessitated to create. He could have created or not. So we want to affirm the freedom of God. So we have to affirm there was some moment where God went from not creating to creating. And so I see that as the most biblically blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we've got God is all-knowing. He's omniscient, a presentist ontology of time, and that God was free to create or not. All three of these are orthodox views. These are historical. They're biblical. The early church held them. You're not going to find any ecumenical creed or anything like that coming against any of these. These are foundational orthodox views. But here's what they claim. When you take an orthodox view with an orthodox view and an orthodox view, you get heresy. It's a magical thing that they claim happens. But again, God is all-knowing. Only the present exists. The past doesn't exist. Jesus is not still suffering on the cross and Satan is celebrating his victory over God. Like, death is defeated. The past doesn't exist, right? And what's really weird is, like, you'll get these online Calvinists coming in and they're like, how dare you say we have to defend presentism? Like, no, presentism is bad, you guys. It's bad. And it's just argumentation by assertion, no reason given. But let me give you an example for why it's a good thing to affirm presentism. We're going to have, let's just come up with a guy, Jimothy, right? So you've got Jimothy Blanco, and Jimothy Blanco lived a very sinful life in his youth. But then he later came to Christ, and he repented, and he had his faith in Jesus, and he lived a very faithful, Christ-like life. He was loving to his wife and his children. But tragically, Jimothy died in a horrific house fire, suffering before he went. Now, if you don't hold a presentist ontology of time, there are different temporal Jimothys. There's a temporal Jimothy engaged in the sin of his youth right now that's no distinctly different than the Christian Jimothy or the Jimothy dying in a house fire. But here's the problem. Jimothy came to know the Lord, but there's a temporal counterpart of Jimothy that is eternally suffering in a house fire. Tell me how that's any distinct from any sort of conception of hell that we have, because the Jimothy that's enjoying the resurrected eternal bliss of the second coming and the kingdom of God for that is a completely different Jimothy than the one that's suffering in a house fire. So if you don't affirm presentism, you don't even have like consistent perpetual like individual being, right? You have individual beings at different slices on the timeline. And so what they're trying to do is affirm a B theory of ontology, or a B theory of time, whether it's like a growing block or moving spotlight or any of these other views. They're denying this idea that the past has ceased to exist. So they're actually arguing that the devil is victorious, celebrating for eternity over his defeat of Christ on the cross, and that Jesus is eternally buried in the grave awaiting the resurrection that just never happened.
Right. Bob Enyart said that Jesus said, "It is finished." In the idea where God is timeless, it's not finished.
No.
Jesus is forever on that cross.
He says, your sins I'll no longer remember. I'll no longer recall to mind. Zaker, right? The problem is if God is in an atemporal state, or the B theory is true, our sins are eternally before him. There's no distinction. It's just mental gymnastics. It's like looking at this phone. It's like looking at this phone and saying, this is when you're sinning, and this is when you're saved, and I see it all. But this is no longer before me. What do you mean it's no longer before you? It doesn't make sense in their view.
Everything simultaneously exists. So you had a commenter who wanted me to explain divine simplicity some more. I don't know if that you want to go down that route.
Well, before you do that, I wanted to play one more real quick clip, and I wanted to show you an example of here we go. This is the sort of stuff that I've been getting, and I've called this gentleman out. He knows I've called him out. Here we go. Basically, to summarize dynamic omniscience, we need to say three things.
1, I'm wrong. 2, God doesn't know the future. 3, it's philosophical nonsense. God knows the future. Come on, man.
Wait. Go back. How many views has he got?
Let me go back.
How many likes? Do people like this?
It's got
28
likes
and
48 comments.
Is he being ratioed? Click on the comments. Are they positive? They negative?
No, they're most great points. Keep it up, brother. Let's go.
Okay.
God knows the future because it is the events he chooses to allow. No, okay, you don't even know your own view. Don't use my words. It's so silly here.
They're positive comments.
Oh, here's one. I called this guy out. The worst I've heard from Idolkiller on this is when he tries to explain Ephesians 1 by saying that we were chosen before the foundation of the fallen world, not the world itself. I don't know why all the translators missed that interpretation. It's like, no, dude, like he's combining, he's not paying attention. These are not clear thinkers because they're combining different points that I've made. They're getting all befuddled in their own head and they don't understand the point I'm making. And it's like, can you just perhaps take notes and then like try to connect those dots, maybe just like track the argument? It's like, no, we weren't chosen before. I don't believe we're necessary beings. I don't believe that we were known before creation. Like that's entirely antithetical to my view. I am not so important that God needed to create me. You know, like I get flack all the time from these man-centered idolaters when they come in and they go, you mean to tell me that when God decreed who he was going to save and who he wasn't, that he wasn't thinking of you? And I go, he decreed to save a people that would trust in him, that would follow him. Yeah. I was not eternally necessary, not eternally needed to be known. And the world could have continued on perfectly fine without me.
So
God did not need to create me.
Calvinists use language to manipulate, not to inform people. And so when they call other people man-centered, when you point out their hypocrisy and how they actually are extremely man-centered, like God chose me out of everyone, not for anything I did, just for me. Like there's a mocking video of Tyler Vela where he's gushing about himself, my me. It's like they have the most man-centered theology ever. It doesn't faze them that their theology is extremely narcissistic and man-centered because their charges against us never had substance. It's just what language is available to make us cave on whatever issue that they're presenting and to bludgeon us with language. And so that's why pointing out their hypocrisy does not work, because they're not in the game to inform. They're in the game to manipulate and use rhetoric.
God knows the future. What are you denying God knows the future? Like, are you dishonest or stupid? Like the first couple times somebody says this, I could be like, maybe you're struggling to understand. I'll try to be charitable. No, God knows everything. The debate isn't over whether or not he knows the future. The debate is over the nature of the thing he knows, right? Does God know me, or does he know me as a baby? Right? Well, at one point he knew me as a baby. Now he knows me as a full-grown man, right? Did he know me as an embryo in my mother's womb? Did his knowledge of me change at all? Like that's what we're talking about. Not whether or not he knows the future, but the nature of the thing he knows. So I come in and I go, let me explain it to you. I'll take my time. And then I'll explain it. I'll send you quotes. I'll send you videos 2, 3, 4, 5 dozen times. And then for you to say, why are you claiming God doesn't know the future? You deny God knows the future. I'm going to say you're either cognitively damaged, like your brain has been functionally incapacitated, or you're just a dishonest liar. Those are the only two. And like you, I'm very gracious, I'm very kind, I'm very patient initially. But about the 5th dozen time I tell you I believe God knows everything that's logically possible to be known, and he knows the future perfectly, and you turn around and say, well, why are you denying he knows the future? You're either an idiot or you're a liar. There's no other alternative here. Right? And then to say, well, why don't you just believe the Bible? I'm literally quoting scripture to you and you're dismissing it because you're saying, well, no, that's metaphorical and God had to condescend. Where are you getting that from in the Bible? Oh, I'm getting it from Plato and Aristotle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's a little frustrating, but this is what we get on their side of the, and it's not, I levy arguments against Calvinism, and I go, this is an entailment of your view. It's a perceived entailment. You may not affirm it, but I see it as a perceived entailment. I try to at least be charitable there. I don't even get that in return. This is what you believe. This is what you say. And it's a little frustrating. So,
If only I had a book on the subject. Okay, so I published an anonymous author called Understanding Calvinism, and I put the whole audiobook, I converted it to audiobook so people could go listen to it on my channel. It's called Understanding Calvinism on God is Open, but it talks about the mindset, the cult mentality, the milieu control, how their followers set up hierarchies. And it's more about the personalities involved. It's more about understanding human nature and behavior and the thought processes rather than the theological implications of all. Because Calvinism operates as kind of like a cult. There's cults of personalities. There's hierarchies. They're vying for status. They have their own special language that's known to themselves and not to outsiders. They signal in-group signals that don't translate. That's why Calvinist memes don't land except for towards other Calvinists, because they're nonsensical. Normal people, they don't understand. That's just nonsense to like normal people. So the only people sharing these Calvinists, the funny thing is I made anti-Calvinist memes and the Calvinists started sharing my memes as if a Calvinist made it and like endorsing my memes. It's just the funniest thing ever.
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah.
So Donald, thank you for the super. Says, thanks, Brother Warren. I've come to the conclusion that James White is being deliberately deceptive when he is dancing around questions. He is a prideful teacher. Matthew 23, 27 through 28 best describes Mr. White. God bless you. Thank you for the super. Yeah, you know, I'm hoping Jerry is just slow on the uptick and not out there intentionally being dishonest. I don't see how that's possible. He said he quoted John Sanders, and as I showed you, all you have to do is go to what is the article called? drjonsanders.com, summary of open theism. And you can jump to the section, do a word search for dynamic omniscience. I'll put it in the comment section there. Hopefully that popped up. And you'll see that's what I read off of this evening. It's exactly what I've been saying. It's been all along. And he says, God's knowledge of the future contains knowledge of what God's decided, knowledge of possibilities, like all of this. And he's talking about how God knows the future. So to quote John Sanders or claim you're quoting John Sanders to say that he doesn't believe God knows the future and therefore I'm wrong is just, it's asinine. So I don't know where Jerry's getting this. I hope maybe he's just, maybe he relied on AI or something.
I think he's just doing a playful thing. That's what his video struck me as.
No, because we've messaged back and forth, and he's told me that he doesn't believe he's misrepresenting me, and that he's got these articles. And so I told him, I was like, let's debate the issue. Now, I don't think he's operating in good faith. I like Jerry still, but I don't think he's operating in good faith.
Remember when Israel Trejo told he said he had all these philosophers endorse his opening statement, and that turned out to be like he misunderstood like every single person he interacted with.
That's true. That's true. Israel was. It was the weirdest. It was the weirdest energy too in that debate, because he'd come in as so insecure, and then he talked about that, and then it just mumble a little bit, and it was just like he was so insecure and lacked any sort of confidence. But then at the same time, like he wanted to like attack Drew, heresy and heretics, and it's like. It was like if it's like, remember the movie Office Space? Have you seen My Stapler?
Well, yeah.
It was like that mixed with like the same energy as a Chihuahua Terrier or a Chihuahua. It was like that kind of.
The funniest part is in his conclusion when he named off everyone who helped him. I'm like, if your name is on this list, you're probably dying inside right now. It's like, don't name me.
Oh, dude, he named Ryan Mullins. He named Ryan Mullins. I reached out to Ryan. I was like, buddy, you might like, hey, John Sanders supposedly lost his job after he debated James White.
It might be true.
You need to reach out to your employers and let them know that you're being cited in this debate. This could not be good.
Oh man, it was so fun. It's like, oh no, he literally misunderstood everyone. So maybe your twitchy friend has interacted with a bunch of people and misunderstood every single person he interacted with. It is possible. We have precedents, is all I'm saying.
It is possible. It is possible. Gosh, I hope Jerry is just it could be cognitive dissonance due to a strong bias influence. I don't see how that's possible. And perhaps I'm just frustrated, and I'll concede that. And I think the best place to bear that out would be in a debate on Donnie Badinsky's channel. So I told Jerry this evening when we were in a same live stream over there, I said, hey, reach out to Donnie, set it up. I'm tired of playing around. You know, like I've been provoked. I'm mad. Let's debate this.
I'm dying. Well,
hey, Chris, thank you for joining me for this.
Did you want to talk simplicity real quick?
Yeah. I mean, we're only 2 hours in. We've got 2 hours.
Okay.
Do that. Let's do that.
So classical theism states that God is simple, and what God is simple means is he has no parts. And this is more than just not having body parts, arms and legs and parts, but God has nothing in himself which is not identical to himself. He has nothing in himself that can be distinguished from any other part of himself. And so God's love is indistinguishable from God's power. Anything that is God is God. So there's a famous statement that all that is God, or all that is in God is God, and that nothing can be separated or distinguished from one another. God is irreducibly and not complex at all. He's irreducible in substance. And so the problem is with Trinitarianism is if you're saying Jesus is God, well, Jesus was a man, he grew up, he had body parts, he grew in wisdom, he grew in knowledge. And so if you're trying to add something with parts, something that has distinguishing features from one another and saying that is God's substance, that creates in a simple God parts, dependencies, it creates relationships. You just can't have that with a simple God. And so if you're talking to someone who understands simplicity, immutability, timelessness, and you ask them if the human part of Jesus was God, like they have to answer no. More often than not, they'll just never answer. They do not want to answer this question. So what this question is highlighting a key aspect of their Platonism, in which God is this simple substance. But most people don't understand that this is how they actually view God. Trinitarianism is kind of a farce in that sense. Any other aspect of God is some sort of avatar and not God's substance, because God is irreducible. Nothing in God can be differentiated from anything else in God. They're not truly Trinitarians in that case. And so that's why the question is so potent, because you're pitting their biblical knowledge against so you're hitting them with biblical citation and biblical verses about God becoming flesh, and Paul talking about the fullness dwelling bodily, and public perception, because they do not want to state publicly what they actually believe about the deity of Jesus. They don't want to say these things because it looks really, really bad. And so they have no answer for you. If you ask if the human part of Jesus, if that part was God, instead they'll go to this little trite hypostatic union. Oh, you don't understand the hypostatic union. Or they'll go to their little catchphrases. Jesus is 100% God and 100% man. Yeah, but the 100% man is not the 100% God part in your estimation. It doesn't work with your theology. That's why I get blocked on Facebook by James White, because they're scared to death of their own metaphysics. And of course, in the Semite mind, you have divine dirt. The divine, the spiritual world is overlapping with the physical world. Jesus could have Godhead dwell in him bodily, as Paul writes in Colossians 2, because Paul was not a Platonist. The deity could dwell bodily. It wasn't Gnosticism. It wasn't Platonism. The material world has. Paul talks about someone going up to the third heaven, whether in body or spirit. He didn't know. Why? Because in his theology, it could be either. It's not the hard separation that we think of in today's world. We're adopting Platonist metaphysics. Okay, so that's the down and dirty of why that question is so potent and why they refuse to answer.
Well, and the thing too, like you touched on this, is you can't even have before and after relations. You can't even have what are called Cambridge changes, where like you have like my relationship with my phone. I'm still me, my phone's still the phone, but as it moves around me, we have spatial relationships that have changed. You can't even have that with a divine, simple God. So he can't go from not being creator to becoming creator. So what it collapses into is that he is existing altogether distinct and different from us. And you go, well, did he exist before or after? And they go, well, that has no application. And you're like, it has to. Like, you have to have a before and after. Did he, or have we always existed simultaneously along with him in a sort of, what would you call that? Pantheism, like, but their system is convoluted, extra biblical, pagan, and not compatible at all with God's self-revelation. But yet they'll laugh at you and say you don't understand.
Yep. As Nietzsche said, Christianity is Platonism for the people. And he's correct to the extent that he understood Christian academics.
Yeah. Well said. Well, thank you to everybody for tuning in for this fun. Oh, wait, there's one more super chat here from Eastgate. He says, what is the purpose of Jesus saying the narrow path is difficult to enter if Calvinism says it's predestined? That's a great point. For the unelect, it's not difficult, it's impossible. And for the elect, it's not difficult, it's assured.
Impossible is the most difficultest of the difficult.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question, Eastgate. Save that and use that in your debate questions and stuff. I see you over in the super chats. That's a really good one. I like that. But yeah, thanks, Chris, for joining me tonight. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. It was a fun a fun chill stream. I said super. I was looking over here. But yeah, it was a fun chill stream. I appreciate that. Everybody like, subscribe, comment below. Go over to Idolkiller channel 2, subscribe, like the Reformed Rangers. And if you do feel like it, please lift me and my family up in prayer and consider financially supporting us at the Give, Send, Go link as we prepare for hopefully what will be the last big battle that we're facing. But I really appreciate all of you guys. Thanks so much and good night.
Putting on Christ is not one among many jobs a Christian has to do, and it is not a sort of special exercise for the top class. It is the whole of Christianity. Christianity offers nothing else at all. C.S. Lewis.